Okay, today we're going to talk about a lens which is not a new lens, but it is arguably one of the nicest lenses that I think I've ever used, which is, I mean, that's a pretty big statement to make. So we're going to be talking about the Leica 50mm f1.4 Summilux aspherical lens. I've been using this with the Leica M11 and with the M11 Monochrom. And I've got to say, I mean, this is a very, very special lens. It's very different to a lot of lenses that I would typically use in a lot of different ways, actually. And we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about what makes this lens special, what it's all about, and what you can expect if you're thinking about diving in and getting this lens. Up front, I think we should probably talk about a little bit of the elephant in the room, right? This is not a cheap lens by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it's a pretty pricey lens, but there are some reasons for that, right? The craftsmanship that goes into these lenses for the M system is just outstanding. I mean, it is just a different level of craftsmanship. And you can feel it as soon as you pick up the lens, as soon as you hold it in your hands, and as soon as you're shooting with it. It's a metal design. It feels incredibly premium. It's very, very sleek. There's a hood kind of built into the lens, so you don't have to kind of attach that or detach that or anything like that. Don't have to really think about that at all. Optically, this is about as good as it gets. But you're not just getting a lens which is optically fantastic, that is designed very nicely, that feels like a premium lens. There are lots of lenses that are like that out on the market. Obviously, you are getting that with this lens, but you're getting something a little bit more. You're certainly getting a character to your lens, right? So what I mean by that is there's a certain look and a certain feel that you get with your images when you use a lens like this. It's not just very, very sharp, right? There's a certain look, a very flattering look that you're getting by using a lens like this, especially if you're shooting portraiture or really anything at all, actually. I've got to say, I'm obsessed with the kind of style that you get, the feel of the photos that you're able to capture with this lens. And it doesn't even really stop there. So before we even get into any of the sort of specs and any of the info around that kind of thing, and the sort of technical side of it, there's a feel to using this lens as well. Obviously, with the M system, this is a completely manual focus system. So that's partly why the lens is able to be so nice and small, right? So it's nice and small in the front of something like the M11, feels really good. That's a lovely, lovely setup. It's not a cheap setup, but it's a beautiful setup to be shooting all kinds of stuff with. But because it's all manual focus, because of the way it feels, it can be a little bit intimidating, to be honest. It's 50mm f1.4. That's a very shallow depth of field that you're playing around with. And with manual focus, even using focus peaking in the camera, that can be a little bit intimidating. But even so, once you get past that initial worry about actually having to do manual focus, there is a certain connection that you get by using a lens like this. There's a real connection to the photography that you're doing. Now, I've spoken before about how using a manual focus camera like the M11 can actually help you become a little bit of a better photographer. And it's a little bit of a sensationalized comment to make, but essentially what I mean by that is it slows you down. It makes you think more about every shot you're taking because you are more engaged with actually working the lens, working the camera, thinking about everything you're doing that's going into the shot. And that's certainly the case with a lens like this, right? It's a very tactile, almost analog feel to the way you're taking photos. And it does make you more engaged with the photography. It makes you more conscious of a lot of the choices you're making with those final images. And I think that really helps to activate that photography part of your brain and kind of elevate your photography while doing it. And then it doesn't hurt that the images from this lens just look so special. Like I say, sharp, beautiful colors, right? Beautiful resolution. Everything's very, very lovely. But then there's that certain look you're getting, that certain feel to the images, which is difficult to properly put a pin on and explain exactly why it feels so good. But I love the character of this lens. It's not just a kind of sterile, clinical, very sharp lens, which you can sometimes find. I wouldn't even say that I would describe it as kind of excessively sharp. Sharpness is good up to a certain point, but some lenses can almost feel so pin sharp that it almost feels like you're going to cut yourself on the photo, which is perhaps not ideal. Whereas here it's a little bit more flattering. It's sharp in the way you want it to be sharp without then being overly sharp. It's very impressive to look at. Of course, 50mm f1.4, that's a great setup for all kinds of things. This is a proper all-rounder lens. And along with something like a 35mm, 50mm really does set you up for for lots and lots of different things. I think personally, I prefer shooting on a 50mm lens. I just like the look of it. I like being able to get in a little bit closer. I like the way portraits feel on a 50mm lens. And that's certainly the case here. With that f1.4 aperture, you really are able to separate your subject from the background if you want to really isolate them in the frame, which looks fantastic. Those out of focus areas look stunning. I mean, it's a really, optically, it's just fantastic. Probably not a big surprise. And especially considering the price of the lens as well, you'd want it to be optically, stunning. But it is, and it's difficult to move past that, to be honest. It's difficult to not want to mention that over and over again, because it really is a very, very lovely image that you're able to capture with this. The lens itself is actually, like I say, pretty sleek in its design. It's not very big either, partly because it's manual focus, so it doesn't have to be massive with an autofocus system inside there. It means Leica have been able to keep this very minimalist in its design. So you've got a very nicely weighted focus ring, which is obviously important considering this is just manual focus, and a nice clicky aperture ring as well, which you love to see. It just adds to that analog feel of controlling the whole setup. And I think what really sums it up for me, and not to gush too much about this lens, but what really sums it up is that you're not just getting, like I say, a good lens, you're getting the whole experience, that tactile, engaged feel with a lens like this. The images are, of course, lovely, fantastic. It's going to take a little bit more work to get the images you want to get because, of course, manual focus, very shallow depth of field, but it feels so worth it when you capture that image. And with the character of the lens, it's a very, very nice time. It's definitely worth checking out this lens. You can follow the link down in the description to go and look at the full spec, the pricing, everything you want to know about the lens, as well as the M11, the M11 Monochrom. I'll pop them all down there so you can go and check that out for yourself. Of course, don't forget to like and subscribe as well. There's new content all the time, new reviews, new tutorials, loads of stuff all the time. I will see you in the next video, but until then, as always, thanks for watching.